Welcome back, folks, to the Insider Insight Show. I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Thank you for joining me today. I'm honored to have back with me someone who is an American hero on many different planes, Matt Bracken. For those of you not familiar with Matt, he's an American writer and novelist and former U.S. Navy SEAL associated with the Freedom Movement, who describes himself, and I think most of us describe ourselves as well, which actually bothers a lot of people, as freedomistas. Ooh, there's that word freedom. He's known for a series of novels beginning with the Enemies trilogy, and he's a constitutionalist who believes in the original intent of the founding fathers of our country. One would think that that's pretty straight down the middle of the fairway. Well, our society has gotten to the point where that's not actually seen down the middle of the fairway. That's seen as being, well, beyond controversial. But it's really a positioning that we all need to take in order to move our constitutional republic at least down the road for our lifetimes, let alone our children's and grandchildren's lifetimes. Website enemiesforeignanddomestic.com. It's my privilege, pleasure, and honor to welcome back Matt Bracken. Matt, welcome back to our platform.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Matt. Enemies foreign and domestic. When we speak about enemies foreign domestic, here in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, people say to me, Dave, that is so over the top. That's so hyperbolic. They're enemies, okay, there might be a couple on a foreign level, but there surely are no enemies domestically. All right, Matt, you're the expert on this. Break this down. Break down the domestic enemies we are currently encountering and their operations that is affecting every American at this point.
Well, I mean, just going back, I think starting with the foreign enemies, I think in the last 20 years, I don't consider Iraqis my enemies. I never really did. I mean, I don't think an Iraqi ever dropped a bomb on an American city that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to go around the world settling everybody's problems, starting with Saddam Hussein and the whole WMD hoax.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to wonder, okay, if we're being sold a bill of goods on a lot of these foreign adventures, Afghanistan, Iraq, teeing up Venezuela, then are the people that are creating this narrative and running this big psyop to get us now stirred up for a new war in Venezuela, just for example,
Mm-hmm.
you know, can you consider them enemies? They're trading our treasure, potentially our blood, for the wealth, the billions of dollars being channeled to the military industrial complex. And these players aren't even American patriots. The Lockheed Martin, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, these are not even American corporations, really. I mean, they are. We've seen what $1 trillion pumped into Ukraine. Half of it's probably gone into offshore accounts,
Mm-hmm.
a large amount of it. A lot of the weapons are now on the international black market that we'll be confronting for years. So it becomes very murky saying what's a foreign and what's a domestic enemy.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, uh, the communists have, to a large extent, won the war. The long march through the institutions. They bridle at being called communists, but clearly they are. Uh, that's Gramsci, the Frankfurt School, all of that. That they've just snuck into the institutions from the PTA, the school boards, universities, and they run they run the education systems that train our children to hate our own country, hate our own heritage. So we've got a long way to go, and I would say that it would be great if we could just focus on a tiny percentage, the actual Antifa, black bloc thugs, but the Antifa that we see on the streets during riots are not even the tip of the iceberg, because they're supported at every level, academia, uh, judges, DAs that don't charge them, state attorney generals that selectively use the law against conservatives, and let the rioters out. In fact, in some of these states, be, being a rioter is a way to score uh, financial reward
Hmm.
because you can get the Lawyers Guild, the ACLU, to turn around and sue the state attorney general, and it's all like an insider game. They're all passing cards under the table. So the guy that was rioting and throwing bricks at the police cars gets tear gassed and handcuffed. He then does a countersuit, and they give him,
Yeah,
$100,000
you're right.
for his trouble. So I mean, it's endemic. It's pervasive. It's woven into the fabric of our society. This treason. It's not like we can just find some compound, of cultists somewhere
It's not that
and
easy.
no, it's completely woven into our fabric now. I think a classic example, all of the judges, but I would say the worst of the worst is this Judge Boasberg
Oh, it's
in
horrible.
Washington.
Yeah.
And if you look at what happened in Brazil, where the Trump of Brazil, Bolsonaro, is in prison now,
Hmm.
and he's in prison exactly for the same reasons that they would like to put a lot of Americans in prison for even questioning a rigged election.
That's right.
Questioning a rigged election is looked at as running a coup, and so the Trump of Brazil is now in prison, and Brazil is being run by a Judge Boasberg clone or twin
Hmm.
named Judge Moraes. He's like a real six. He's a freak. He poses like with a black robe, like he's Batman,
Yeah, right.
like he's a vampire.
He's a
You know,
psycho.
and so does Boasberg.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have that death skull face, with the dead eyes, like I'm the Inquisitor. I'm your enemy, and you are powerless. So if we don't get a grip on what's going on in this country, I think that Trump is making a lot of mistakes. He's being misled by his gatekeepers. People argue about uh, some of the people around him, whether they're sincere or whether they're really working for the other team or maybe working for another country
And a
or
person I
working,
brought up on this regard is Susie Wiles, as chief
yeah,
of staff.
or yeah, former PR flack for big pharma, big agriculture, and the state of Israel. So
And Qatar and China. She has
so
some lobbying
yeah,
deals.
she's a right, and she's the gatekeeper.
Right.
I think this happens to a lot of people. Trump is not particularly intellectual. He's got a good ground sense. He's not. I don't think we'd say in any way he's like well read. Um, but if he's kept from if he's only selectively given audience with people that agree with the Susie Wiles, then we can be misled very badly and make some very bad mistakes. I think Trump is at this point doing very well with Russia concerning Ukraine, trying to isolate the Europeans and work directly with the Russians
Hmm.
to solve that problem, and that would be a wonderful thing. But it looks like the military industrial complex, it has to pivot from the trillion-dollar budgets have to go somewhere. Iraq, then Afghanistan, then Ukraine, and next it'll be Venezuela. If we can do Venezuela like a Panama operation, December 1989, uh, almost, what, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, if we're being sold that Venezuela will be like another Panama, just get rid of the dictator, the people will welcome it. We'll have a little fight with his commando units, and then we'll grab the guy, put him in a penitentiary, and Panama will be in our pocket again. But I think that comparing Venezuela to Panama is a huge mistake. Venezuela is 5 times bigger than South Vietnam,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We tried we tried for more than a decade to seal Vietnam off from resupply
Yeah.
from China over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, like Laos and Cambodia. B-52 arc strikes, carpet bombing,
Right.
turning a strip of the world into the craters of the moon, for dozens and dozens of miles. And we still couldn't keep South Vietnam from being the Viet Cong and NVA in South Vietnam from being resupplied.
Mhm.
But Venezuela has 5,000 kilometers of land border with Brazil and Colombia, who are allies of the
Of Maduro.
Venezuela regime,
Of Maduro. Yeah.
of Maduro.
Mhm.
So I think that we're being played, and we're being played into thinking we can do this with some commando ops, some predator strikes, and then the country is going to fall into our pocket like Panama. And I think it's sort of what's going on is kind of a rope-a-dope strategy. Come on, you're almost one more punch and you'll knock me out. Just come deeper into the tar pit.
Right.
Deeper into the briar patch. You've almost got me. Just follow me a little further into the briar patch. If if we don't succeed in taking out Maduro, and he has even a few thousand loyal troops and weapons caches and so forth, and a plan to move around that we can't immediately snatch him, the propaganda defeat's going to be terrible. And then we're going to be sending in Ranger battalion level, and it'll go up from there. I would not be surprised at all if we don't already have Delta and SEAL Team 6 in there on the ground already. And some of them are under contractor cover or other cover. But, we're already involved. And Trump has a bad habit, I think. Maybe this can work in like New York real estate, of bluffing and saying, you have 1 week or else. Well, the week is up that he gave Maduro.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, let's do another week.
Right. And Maduro is not, supposedly, he's like begging to have an escape plan on the phone. But that's belied by the fact that he's doing outdoor rallies with his troops, saying basically, come and get me, gringo.
But
We're
that's
not,
not report. But Matt, that's not reported in the bought off, what we call the bought off lamestream fake media, including Fox News. That's a component of that bought off lamestream.
that's right. And they won't be disappointed if it does turn into a Vietnam, because,
Right.
you know, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of this bridge in China. I'm not saying every construction project
Yeah, I
in
saw it.
China is,
Yeah.
but that bridge in China is like a magnificent thing. It's like over the highest, biggest bridge over the highest chasm. It's got like a rainbow waterfall out of the middle. It's unbelievable. And they built it in a couple years.
Mhm.
100 years ago, we could build the Empire State Building in 400 days from the ground up. And we built the Hoover Dam in a couple years. Now we can't do anything. It took us
No.
like 15 years after 9/11 to get the Freedom Tower up, one building,
Yeah. Right.
right? We're so hamstrung by our own regulations.
Mhm.
So,
And that's not an accident or coincidence or from incompetence. It's part of the op, right?
but imagine if those trillions of dollars have been spent on our own
That's
infrastructure.
right.
We used to have a world champion interstate highway system, airports. Our airports, I don't know if you've been into airports like O'Hare or JFK. A lot of our airports are just terrible.
Mhm.
Philadelphia is a disgrace. That's a huge city with like they have better airports in the third world than Philadelphia. Such a patched together. Uh, it's embarrassing.
Mhm.
And that all of that money that we've put into the military industrial complex, half of which is kicked back to the politicians that vote for these things,
Right.
or go to these board members. You get the generals, the revolving door. They get paid after their time in uniform for supporting these weapon systems, F-35, things like this. And then they go to work for Lockheed and get their payment, which is you're on the board of directors, no show job, millions of dollars a year. That kind of corruption in Russia gets you shot. When they have a scandal involving ghost soldiers in Russia, or payments going for food that's not delivered to the
Yeah, that
troops,
doesn't last long.
those guys are shot.
Yeah, right.
It's like, make an example of this guy. We don't do this. Also in Russia, it's interesting. In Russia, their main battle rifle of the 20th century and even today is called the Kalashnikov,
Uh-huh.
right? What's our main rifle called? The M16, M4. Kalashnikov didn't become a billionaire. He didn't try to patent it and then sell it to the government for $20,000 a rifle. His reward was you'll be treated very well with great respect, get a nice dacha. You're not going to be a millionaire, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you'll be in the nomenclatura. You'll get to shop in the good stores, I'm sure. Under the Soviet Union, I'm talking about.
Right, right, right,
But they named the rifle the Kalashnikov.
right.
And the MiG is named after Mikoyan and another guy. So it's
Mhm.
like you don't design weapons to become a millionaire in Russia.
Yeah.
They have this, they've gone from zero to 1,000 miles an hour on their drone program in the last 4 years. And nobody's selling the Russian government drones that don't work for, $1 million each
Right.
because they consider it their patriotic duty. They come out of engineering school desiring to build weapons for Russia, not to patent them to get rich off of the Russian taxpayer. We have such a skewed system that our weapon systems aren't designed to be effective. They're designed to be expensive.
Hmm.
They're made of unobtainium. It doesn't matter if they actually don't fly.
That's right.
It
Because
doesn't even
if
matter.
they're ineffective, there are going to be more orders, right?
And they'll have to have another one.
Yeah. The
And
next version.
same thing with our submarines, our destroyers, our frigates. We can't even build ships anymore.
No.
We used to build at the end of World War II, they were like launching a Liberty ship every single day, like an assembly line. And it takes us now 10 years to build an amphibious ship that doesn't even work.
Hmm.
And nobody goes, nobody's fine, nobody loses contracts, everybody's good with it. So these same guys would be happy to see, well, just to compare it to Vietnam, there were 500,000 troops in Vietnam, I think in 1968 at the height. 500,000. What, 40,000 American killed in action,
Hmm.
millions of Vietnamese, underneath those B-52s and napalm, and millions of Vietnamese. And I think the same characters would welcome that in Venezuela.
Hmm.
It could last for years. Jungle warfare. They have 15,000-foot mountains. It's 5 times bigger than South Vietnam. And I think they're just itching to get in there and pivot from the Ukraine war to the Venezuela war.
Right. Because they've run the gamut on that.
They
Right.
have.
I had this discussion with somebody the other day. He said, Dave, you're saying that Russia has won on the battlefield. Well, if they really won on the battlefield, why is Zelensky still around? Why haven't they offed him? I go, whoa, 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 you're looking at this all wrong. They want Zelensky alive because they know 80% of the revenue coming in for armaments into Ukraine is going to go in somebody's pocket and it's going to bleed the West dry further. And the armaments that are going to be there are going to be ineffective, whatever they buy, whatever. I mean, and you're right. I think they're moving now. They said, okay, we've drained everything we can out of this event. Now we're going to go over here.
Yeah, the carcass there is dead. It's bled dry.
Yeah.
And the pivot for Ukraine will be the reconstruction.
Yeah. Right.
It'll be KBR and
And BlackRock.
BlackRock
Oh, yeah.
going in
Yeah.
to vampire the corpse, because it'll take years to demine these great fields and turn them into BlackRock properties.
Right.
In Russia and in the Ukraine previously, foreign nationals couldn't buy the land.
That's right.
That somewhere along the way in the last couple of years since the war broke out, now BlackRock is, buying up the place.
And Ukraine was known as the breadbasket of Eastern Europe, right? So they have this huge amount of farmland now.
But they'll have to demine it for years.
Right.
It's going to be
Well,
a
that's
problem.
okay. People will starve in the meantime, and that's okay for them.
But yeah, I think that Trump has good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Okay, so Matt, let's focus a little more on Venezuela. What if the president called you today, okay? And he says, "Hey, they're telling me I got to go in there and I got to do the deal and I got to, we have to get more involved. We got to get boots on the ground. We have to do this." So right now we're doing this thing. We got carrier groups out there. We have all kinds of personnel out there. As you said, we probably have,
like thousands in Puerto Rico just sitting there.
right. So if President Trump calls Matt Bracken today, famed Navy SEAL, famed
hardly.
operations, what?
Hardly.
Well, no, yeah, yes, you are. You're being modest. What would you tell him? Okay, I know you've said this thing you got till last Friday. Okay, well now it's this Friday. Well, okay, so before this Friday hits and he calls you, what would you tell him to do?
I think that the messaging has been very lame. It's improving on the narco boats. That people can kind of make a rough equation in their head.
Yeah.
A boat has is carrying enough drugs to addict and overdose thousands of Americans. So nobody's exactly crying about these go fasts and semi-submersibles that are clearly not fishing boats. They're straight up drug boats. So I don't think that we needed carrier battle groups
Right.
to pull that operation. I think it's a necessary escalation, and I support it from the Coast Guard playing Keystone Cops for the last 30, 40 years. So
Mhm.
when the Coast Guard has to chase down one of these boats, that assumes that there is a cutter with a helicopter to even find this one boat that's moving 50, 60 miles an hour in the open ocean. Then you've got to say, all right, what's the range of that boat? At what speed can the helicopter even get there? So when you would see a Coast Guard helicopter taking some 50 caliber shots at the engines or firing warning shots in front to try to make them stop, this was a completely ineffective Keystone Cops. Price of doing business for the cartels absolutely meant nothing to them. Just a slight friction, every 10th boat might get stopped by the Coast Guard. And then what happens to the crew? So you've got to bring the cutter close, put a crew in a rigid inflatable boat over to arrest these guys off of the drug boat, put them on the cutter, haul them back to Miami or San Diego, where they go in front of a judge and they bond out.
Right.
Okay. And they're never seen again. So
Right.
it's win-win for the smuggler because
Right.
he'll either make it home and get paid, or he'll get a free ride to America where he disappears into America.
Hmm.
And that was going on for decades.
Hmm.
So you're breaking that chain by actually just taking these boats out. And that's a good thing. I have no problem with that. And the whole thing about the Democrats, the seditious six
Yeah.
bleeding they're pouring out their crocodile tears over the double tap. The idea of not shooting a wounded guy, that's infantry rules. That's as you are taking land and you have finished a firefight and there's a wounded soldier on the ground that you could take as a POW and render medical aid to, right? Send to your rear. You don't shoot that guy. But when you're talking about a helicopter with a health or a predator, you don't have guys on the ground to do that.
Right.
If the boat is
You
still
can't
floating,
extricate those people. You
right?
can't
If the boat is still
extract.
floating, it's still a target.
Right.
And if there are people around the boat, too bad. I mean, you can see dozens of hours of video from Iraq and Afghanistan of double, triple, quadruple taps. I mean, we have automatic cannons on our helicopters that are essentially like shooting out little grenades, like pom pom pom. And you can see on video guys like are crawling away, and boom boom boom, blow them up. The guy's like dragging one leg. He's hiding under a truck, trying to get into the palm trees. Boom boom boom. Because there's no American soldier down there to like, uh, you know, put him in flex cuffs and give him a tourniquet, right? So the whole idea of this double tap being a war crime that is, let's impeach Trump over it is ridiculous. But so that's my feeling on that whole war at sea with the drug boats. But as far as putting troops into Venezuela, look, if it goes like Panama and it succeeds, what do they say? Victory has a thousand fathers, and
Right.
defeat is an orphan.
Right.
So if it's a lightning strike and they Delta snatches Maduro, like Black Hawk Down, except it works, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes
Big
Black Hawk
if.
Down,
Big if. Big.
sometimes Black Hawk Down doesn't work,
Right.
and you have to assume. So Venezuela has the oil, and that's their source of wealth.
Right.
Colombia has a really excellent secret police service. I think it's the DRG.
BRG. Yeah.
so they have a really good they can strategize. They have some very smart people.
Mhm.
Just because their country's poor and sanctioned and in that way a wreck, the fact that that regime has stayed in power this long shows you that they're not incompetent.
Right.
If we could have taken them out, we would have. So you've got that Cuban brain inside of the Venezuelan economy, and you have Russian advisors. The Chinese, I'm sure, are there as observers, much like the Koreans that were fighting in the Kursk salient.
Hmm. Hmm.
They just want to get the experience. So I'm sure there's some Chinese intel guys there trying to recruit. I mean, inside of Venezuela,
Right.
inside among Maduro. There's some Chinese observers, but they're there to learn. But the Russians that are there and the Cubans that are there, they know what they're doing.
They're operational.
Okay. They're operational and they're very smart.
Right.
And they can weigh this whole battlefield the same way we are and say, if the worst case is big victory for Trump, snatch Maduro, American flag goes up everywhere, and Venezuela becomes a gas station for the refineries in Texas because it's nasty fuel. Okay, it's very thick.
It's yeah.
It's a huge amount.
It's dirty. Yeah.
But it's dirty. But it's a short ride across the Gulf of America.
Right.
To our refineries
that
which
can
are
process.
Set up.
Yeah.
Those refineries are made for that crude.
Yep.
We've been doing that business since the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
So the chemistry is like a piece of cake for us. So if the Russians are going to return the favor of what we've been doing to them in Ukraine, right? When we fire these HIMARS from inside of Ukraine, everybody there is an American except some, Ukrainian major. When they say push the button,
right,
he pushes the button.
Right.
But
everybody else behind him,
and the guys up in the air, the satellite guys, everybody is an American firing a missile deep into a Russian refinery 500 kilometers inside of Russia. Everybody is an American. So they would like to return that favor. Mm-hmm. It's funny, Afghanistan was, it was first a Russian problem, then it became an American problem.
Yep.
The Russians actually, though, left in good order and didn't leave, 10,000 Humvees and, 500 helicopters. The Russians crossed their bridge into whatever the stand is on the north side in good order with their general as like the last one, mm-hmm. that walked off over the bridge. You can see the video. Mm-hmm. So when they decided to leave, it was in good order.
Right.
But we had spent the decade doing everything we could to assist the Mujahideen, mm-hmm. including paying millions to Osama bin Laden and others to be a thorn in the Russian side, mm-hmm. and making movies like Rambo number whatever it was, right. where these guys that are now we would call them the Taliban, terrorists, are the big freedom fighters. So right. It's like anybody that goes into this as a morality play where white hats and black hats is seriously missing the whole point. But the Russians got out of Afghanistan, but we did bleed them, and it was the 1980s. So this was part of that bleeding the Soviet Union that led to its downfall eventually. They didn't have the economy we had to just lose that kind of manpower and materiel. Mm-hmm. And the veterans coming home that were very disaffected by their rules of engagement and so forth, they became an opposition in existence. Mm-hmm. And because of the patriotic nature of the Russians, that their Second World War experience, they call it the Great Patriotic War, mm-hmm. is orders of magnitude greater than what Americans think about World War II.
That's right.
So when the Afghan soldiers began to march as part of anti-Soviet demonstrations, where they would wear their cap and the blue and white striped the different Marines and sailors, mm-hmm. but they would wear a shirt that meant like I'm former Russian Marine, and that made it very difficult for the regime to just go in and break heads, mm-hmm. because you had these disaffected Afghan soldiers. Well, so that's why why am I getting into all of that? Russia understands all this.
That's right.
Their strategists are much better than ours. You see people on TV like Keenan, General Keen, these are idiots.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
We have a few that are never on Fox, like Daniel Davis and not what's the other Colonel,
McGregor.
McGregor, right. We have some, but they're completely out of the power
Oh,
orbit.
no, no, no. They're persona non grata.
All of the generals that have the ear of anybody are these sellouts, these prostitutes that are millionaires now because they pushed boondoggle programs while they were in, and they yes manned. Oh, we're about to turn the corner in Afghanistan. Another 500 billion. It should see us through. We left in complete disorder, leaving behind tens of thousands night vision gear, helicopters, everything.
That's now on the black market, as you alluded to
It's
earlier,
on the black market, billions of dollars of cash, just
to be used
pallets of
against us at a later date.
right, pallets of $100 bills.
Right.
So when you want to do for example, a terrorist operation overseas, countries can use their diplomatic pouch, which means you can't look, and a diplomatic pouch can be the size of a cargo container.
Mm-hmm.
So you can load millions of dollars into a bag, use your diplomatic channels to get it to any country, and then pay off any terrorist to do a bombing or anything else
Mm-hmm.
using American $100 bills that were left in Afghanistan and other places. So knowing all of this, I think that the Russians and the Cubans are laying a trap for us there, and they will try to make it look like, oh, you can probably do this.
Oh,
It
yeah.
might take a little more than Delta. You might have to take the airport with the Rangers.
Yeah.
Now, in the very beginning part of the Ukraine war, Putin was trying to basically bluff a surrender out of Kiev. That's when he had a column of 100 miles of tanks and trucks
Right.
lined up,
On the
like
border.
we're ready to go.
Just north of the border. Right.
Yeah, they did an airport operation where elite Russian soldiers got smacked very hard. They thought we're going to seize this airport and use it as an airhead, for operations.
Right.
And it turned out that the Ukrainians kind of were reading that playbook, and it was a very costly temporary victory, the kind of thing where, okay, we seized the airport, now we're leaving a week later, at the cost of hundreds of dead spec ops troops.
Right.
So the reason I'm saying that, even in Little Panama, there were Panamanian soldiers that fought.
Mm-hmm.
Another podcaster, you probably know, Chuck Holton,
Mm-hmm.
he actually parachuted in to Panama, as a ranger,
Mm-hmm.
and they fought.
Yeah.
SEALs died.
Yeah.
They fought. It was not like,
No, thank you for being
Americans.
thank you for being here. So nice of you to show
No,
up.
they didn't just
good.
wave the white flag because Americans landed.
Right.
And when you do complex things like parachute operations to seize an airport, to fly in C-17s, you don't know if the whole airport could be mined.
Right.
Maybe we have perfect human intelligence to know all of these plans, but it can go haywire very quickly. And if we have a Black Hawk Down situation, I mean, look what came out of Black Hawk Down. Now they run Maine and Minnesota politics. When did we invade Somalia, take it over, and colonize it they earned the ability to send 250,000 Somalis here? So the blowback from these things, the unintended consequences of these things,
It's enormous.
are always like things you never thought of, and they're not a tiny little grain of sand. They're giant. They're mountains. Who would have thought Minnesota politics would be taken over by planting up, 150,000 or 200,000 Somalis in Minneapolis?
Mm-hmm.
Now they run the state. They changed their flag to resemble a Somali flag.
Mm-hmm.
The police chief and the mayor of Minneapolis go on camera and speak in Somali
Right.
to their constituents. So going into Venezuela, I think that the Russians, they're not forgive and forget. Look, they'd like to get Ukraine over also, but they're not going to be forgive and forget about how we played them in Ukraine, and to an extent also in Syria with
Mm-hmm.
Assad.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that look, if it's, everybody will say, Bracken, you're such an idiot. It was like a 48-hour, Delta SEALs, Rangers, in and out. They got Maduro. Now it's like victory parade. Everybody's waving American flags. Yep, if that happens, great. But you can walk through a minefield and not blow your leg off. It doesn't mean you were a genius.
That's
It
right.
means you were lucky,
Yeah, right.
right? You were lucky.
Well, and some operations people you and I know are concerned that actually Russia has provided not just the hardware but the personnel to run the S-400 anti-aircraft
And
systems, which
potentially 500s.
right, which is the most sophisticated.
And when you don't want to if possibly your navy is actually kind of a obsolete paper tiger. It's like if World War II never happened and we hadn't built bunches of aircraft carriers and we're cruising around in the 70s and 80s with bigger and bigger battleships, right?
Yeah,
Until somebody comes out with a missile that can destroy battleships and it's shown that they're all obsolete. That's how aircraft carriers are today.
that's right.
An aircraft carrier was great in Top Gun for beating the crap out of Libya.
Right.
You know,
You're right.
yay, America, we can beat Libya.
Yeah.
But in the open ocean, if we were fighting the Russians, I mean, this is going back decades and decades to the 80s. I was involved in a command post exercise, a big joint command post exercise at Fort Bragg,
Hmm.
and different people were playing different roles. And my roommate there at the BOQ, with the can't remember the name of the building, the Kennedy Center, Special Warfare, all that. My roommate was playing Soviet naval aviation. And the scenario is like we're fighting between Diego Garcia and Iran and the Indian Ocean. And the Russians had a base on an island called Socotra off of the mouth, I think, of the Red Sea, which they actually did.
Hmm.
And the backfire bombers that swing wing, like kind of like our B-2 bombers,
Uh-huh.
but with swing wings,
Uh-huh.
supersonic strategic bomber. They could, inside of them, they had like a pair of giant cruise missiles that were also, I think, close supersonic or high Mach, but they can launch them from further away from the carrier than the carrier's protection can reach the backfires. And
Poof.
every day he told me, today we sank the aircraft carriers again. So they said, oh, you have to like do this. They kept handicapping him because
Right.
he kept sinking the air. This is like in the 1980s.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
kept
Yeah.
sinking the aircraft carrier
Yeah.
with air launched cruise missiles.
You can't do that. No,
You
no.
can't do that.
No,
Oh,
no.
you can't send 4 backfires out to launch 8 missiles at once,
Right.
right? You can only send 2 backfires out because we've determined that maintenance resulted in them not being able to take off or something, right?
Yeah.
So even back then, so if we're going to go to war eventually, say with China over Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Okinawa, if we don't want to tip our hand already that our carriers are sitting ducks, because we won't be able to bluff China in the run up to like a pushback where we say we're trying not to go to war. We're trying to bluff China. If the bluff is already called over Venezuela because they sink a couple of our Navy ships, once we go kinetic on Venezuela,
We open our hand.
well, they can then, to potentially, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of these things. It's what's it called, a K car, but they're containerized missiles. You can
Right.
have a missile on a small freighter inside of a cargo container,
Hmm.
and it just has a hydraulic jack to all over the Caribbean. See these little ships, 200, 300 feet long with 10 to 30 containers on them. They're running from like a port in Honduras to a port in wherever, right?
Mhm.
Carrying rum or sugar, who the hell knows?
Yeah. Cool.
Just all these islands have to be resupplied. So like the Budweiser is in one container, right? And the frozen hamburgers are in the other container. So they're all over the Caribbean. There's no way you can sort them all out. Well, maybe some people will disagree with me. No, Matt, we have perfect knowledge of all of these, but a vessel can elevate a little container and launch a very modern cruise missile with a very short running time. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
But what do they say? The enemy gets a vote too.
Yeah.
And when you see our military geniuses like General Keane on television, you have to wonder if this is the caliber of planning that Trump is hearing.
We're screwed.
We're screwed. And in the background, there are people that are thinking, hey, look, if it does go totally haywire, and like next week we have to drop the 82nd Airborne, and the next week it's a Marine division. It's Da Nang all over again. Now we need to protect Caracas. Well, it's going to take 20,000 troops for American troops to protect the Caracas metro area. Okay, but now they're running patrols and their patrols are being ambushed. Come on, haven't we seen that Vietnam War before? And now it's closer. That's good. Our logistics will be a lot, we're not going across the Pacific to Vietnam, but it's 5 times bigger than South Vietnam with a bigger population, just as much jungle, higher mountains, and 5,000 kilometers of border with 2 countries that would like to screw us. I mean, not the people of Brazil.
No, but
right. Lula and the Colombian president would absolutely. It would be sanctuary, number one. So when the Venezuelan guerrillas need a rest, they'll run into Brazil, and we're not going to dare bomb Brazil. No way. So we'll have sanctuary. And we know from Vietnam, if a country's got a sanctuary that you can't go after,
they got a great forward operating base.
We could only do in Cambodia and Laos, the special forces could only do limited strikes using these like hatchet force, prairie fire, little A-team level things going in a helicopter to do tiny demo pinprick raids or put sensors along the Ho Chi Minh Trail or try to catch prisoners. By the end of the Vietnam War, by the late 60s, early 70s, those special forces little raids, like one helicopter inserting, 8 or 10 guys with a couple of your locals, for guides. They were being ambushed at the LZs. They were being chewed up. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we quit doing it because the casualties were not worth what we were getting out of it. So imagine having a sanctuary across 5,000 miles of border with Brazil and Colombia, including rivers. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, a million streams, and we're talking about streams that have jungle over the top, right? I mean, it's not like a river where you can like watch it from above and see every canoe on the river.
Right.
The river is navigable for an outboard motorboat with, a squad of guys on it, but it's invisible from the sky. Invisible. Oh, we'll have to put SEALs on those rivers to do ambush operations. I mean, can you imagine? This is funny. I knew a SEAL who became commissioned, a Mustang, got out of the SEALs, and then he was re-recruited by the Coast Guard. This is in the 80s. We had a program in Bolivia and in Peru, and at that time, I forget who the president was and who the Congress was, but they said no military troops can be in South America doing these interdiction ops. So they were sheep-dipped as Coast Guard. So they were SEALs wearing a Coast Guard. Well, no, they were officially Coast Guard. I mean, right. They signed the papers.
Right.
But they're on boats with, Bolivian and Peruvian commandos running up these rivers with machine guns. Supposedly, don't get off the boat. The gun is only for self-defense, but they're on the whole operation.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's all under jungle.
Right.
You're not going to sit on the boat while the guys you've been training are like hitting the cocaine plant, right?
Right.
How would they respect you if you did that?
Right.
So they're allegedly Coast Guard only supposed to stay on the boat, but they're actually up in the, going on the land attack against the cocaine processing facilities, mm-hmm. doing those kind of operations, shooting people, getting in firefights, and all hidden from Congress because the oversight then was no military. Okay, they're Coast Guard. That's law enforcement. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But if we get tangled into Venezuela, and I hope we don't.
Yeah.
The rivers in Bolivia, tiny little Bolivia, not that tiny, but I mean, compared to Venezuela, 5,000 kilometers of rivers and jungles and mountain trails, and we don't have enough seals to seal that off. And you can't do it with predators through heavy jungle canopy.
And that's assuming we can get them in because they have S-400s.
And it's a long way from the Caribbean.
That's
We're
right.
not going to, they won't let us overfly Brazil.
Well,
They won't
and
let us overfly maybe Guyana, but we can't overfly Colombia to do this. So we're going to have to overfly hundreds of kilometers of Venezuela. Remember, it's 5 times bigger than South Vietnam,
and
just to get to the border with Brazil to enter. Oh, forget it.
well, and these operations folks, you and I know, tell me, yeah, they also have Su-57s, which are far superior to our jet aircraft, and they got. And it's not going to be Venezuelans in the cockpit. They're Russians that have Venezuelan, like you're talking about, sheep dipped, and they're right. And they also tell me that they're.
But I don't think it'll be jet versus jet. I think jet versus jet is passe, just like tank versus tank is passe now, because of drone warfare has completely upended the modern order of battle, 100%. Year by year. I just saw a week or two ago. There's a pretty decent documentary on PBS Frontline,
Mhm.
and it's called something like 2,000 meters. And for like a year, Ukraine and one of the many forgotten big city battles that eventually Ukraine at huge loss because they're ordered, don't retreat. You have to hold Mariupol. You have to hold Bakhmut, fight to the last man. Totally stupid strategy, right?
Right, right.
Meat grinder strategy. Just keep pouring in troops until you have no more troops, and then the Russians digest that city. But this documentary is from like 2023, and it's about men fighting on a forest tree line that's like 50 meters wide by 2,000 meters long. It's open country on both sides. You're annihilated in 2 seconds. Just to get to the beginning of this tree line, you have to dash in an armored personnel carrier and try to make it into the tree line. And all around you are destroyed armored personnel carriers from like the 10 that didn't make it in the last week, and all the dead all around. There's no helicopters coming to evacuate anybody. If you're wounded, you tourniquet it, good luck. And so this is like a 2-year-old documentary. There's not even drones barely mentioned in the documentary. In 2 years, that war's gone through like several revolutions in warfare.
Mm-hmm.
So turning back to Venezuela, I don't think we're going to see like a test of F-35s versus, I don't think we're going to see that. It's going to be a surface-to-air missile shoots down a couple of American jets. Pilots are captured. They're on television. The chances of this going, remember Francis Gary Powers, that's the U-2 at the end of Eisenhower.
Yep.
He was shot down overflying Soviet Union. We denied we were doing it. We thought the U-2s flew higher than they had missiles. We were wrong. And there's Francis Gary Powers on TV wearing his Zoom suit,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously an American, all of his survival gear on the table. And, so the chances of a Black Hawk Down or of a Francis Gary Powers or other scenario where you have POW pilots on Venezuelan TV, then what's Trump going to do? He's going to dial it up.
Yes, yeah.
He's going to start going IDF against Venezuelan targets. Then there will be collateral damage and
one of the other concerns, Matt, some of these military operations folks we know have told me is we're concerned that Putin and the Russians have already shipped hypersonics to Venezuela. And let's face it, somebody puts the wrong foot in there. And how long does it take a hypersonic to get to Miami, to get to DC?
No, I think that they won't do that. I think that the Russians have shown in the Ukraine war. I know people will say, "Oh, Matt, they're blowing up the hell out of Kiev." It's amazing. They'll say, like last night, 300 drones hit the Kiev area, and there were 12 civilian casualties. That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a guy coming home from the late shift that was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
The Russians, compared to any other, certainly compared to America and the Brits firebombing German cities day and night, Americans by day, Brits by night, or what we did in Tokyo with firebombs, and other cities. So, intentionally just destroying the city is a target because those people work in the factories. Sorry about your wife and kids. So the idea that Russia has just been going crazy, launching missiles all over the place is not true. We've been trying to bait them into escalate, and especially the Europeans have been trying to bait them into escalating for some casus belli where we can do they've done like the fake drones into Poland a few times, things like that. The repurposed munitions dropped into Poland, but it's shown that they were actually Ukrainian weapons, not Russian weapons. Anyway, the Russians are no way going to hit Miami. No chance. We'll hit military targets all over Caracas. They may then hit a ship, or it'll be a small ship that's supporting SEALs. So it's got 20 crewmen on it after they've dropped the small boats off for the SEALs, and that boat will get smoked by a missile somewhere close to Venezuela, where we can't say, "Oh my God, how can you do that?" after we've just like blown up all the military targets around Caracas. People aren't going to accept. We need to go to war because they struck back at a naval vessel. But the hypersonic certainly could be used to take out, for example, an American destroyer.
Okay.
But
God forbid
would
carrier,
they?
right?
But again, would they?
Right.
We have shown all of our cards in Ukraine. We've fired enough HIMARS for them to figure out the electronic warfare countermeasures for all of them. The first 3 or 4 do real well, and then after that, they've got it dialed in how to jam them or spoof them with electronic countermeasures. So we're kind of like showing all our best cards, and they know we don't have anything better than the HIMARS. We don't have hypersonics.
Right.
Russia may want to lure us into a tar pit in Venezuela, not defeat our Navy, lure us into a tar pit, give us a huge Vietnam, but don't show your best hypersonics.
Mm-hmm.
Let us wonder what they could do. If they hit a destroyer and kill 200 sailors 100 miles from Venezuela, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for anybody in this country to resist the patriotic war drums to just go to Venezuela and settle that whole thing, and then we're in Vietnam. So I think that the Russians are going to want to gradually draw us in. I mean, the thinkers, the strategists, the Cubans, the Russians, and the Venezuelans that are thinking about all this, I think they're going to try to rope-a-dope us.
Right.
There are scenarios where we win quick and decisively, but there are also scenarios where Maduro sneaks away and he becomes like Robin Hood of the forest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the BRICS nation world, which is considering Uncle Sam to be the big bad gringo, right? The imperialist, back for another banana war. We've done it in Haiti, Dominican Republic, Honduras, Panama, right? Mexico, a couple times, some of these countries. So it'll be easy to sell in South America that the gringo imperialist Yankee is back. And Maduro is now suddenly goes from villain to Robin Hood.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's resisting the big gringo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if we don't get him and he's out in the jungle broadcasting and sniping at American soldiers that are guarding facilities around Caracas. So yeah, I hope Trump doesn't get and that's what happens when you bluff all the time.
That's
you
right.
Give people, it's not a smart military move.
Because you paint yourself in a corner, Matt.
If you're doing it in business and the guy doesn't take it up, it's okay. You didn't get that project.
Right.
That New Jersey building never gets built. Okay. We'll go somewhere else and bluff somebody else. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll bluff him right down. But if you do this in war and the bluff doesn't work, you got to back it up or back down. And you've got a carrier battle group. That means you're like burning millions of dollars a day.
That's right.
So the carrier is nuclear, but all the ships around it are fuel burning. Mm-hmm. And they have to keep moving. And it's just, the fuel bill is doing this. and the personnel aren't home for Christmas.
That's
So
right.
and unlike other wars, they're not hermetically sealed. They're all FaceTiming with their family and, doing homework with their kids. So it's amazing, the technology. So if all of a sudden these ships go dark and there's like no messages coming out, how they'll have to do that at some point, like put the ship into isolation mode.
Hmm.
But then the morale really goes down. It's like
That's
I'm
right.
coming up to Christmas. I thought I'd be home 2 weeks ago. All leave has been canceled. I'm stuck on this ship until Trump decides to start a war. Not everybody on those ships loves Trump,
Right.
And I mean, there's a faction that is backing Mark Kelly,
Hmm.
and that it's easy now to sow dissension in the ranks. That's why the seditious six thing is such a hot button.
Hmm.
If it was just like a tiny like the Lincoln conspirators, right?
Right. Right.
Everybody hated the Lincoln conspirators, well, except maybe the Confederates, but
Right.
they lost the war, right?
Right.
But they hung the Lincoln conspirators like a month after it, like a month or two after. They made like a 6-person gallows and hung them all, and America cheered. Well, the winning side cheered. If we get if we have disaffected troops already sitting in Puerto Rico, sitting on ships, sitting in Panama, they're going to start leaking out. There's no way you can keep thousands of people from communicating with home.
That's right.
It's impossible.
Hmm.
And they'll get the word out, and then you'll have people saying, "I was told to do something that I consider an unlawful order." Doesn't matter if it's true or not. It will
Right.
be amplified by our traitor media.
That's right.
That it's like it's like a call to action from the heroes that are resisting the imperialist overreach. And so, yeah, we're in a real tough spot here because the country's not going to be all rallying behind going into a war in Venezuela.
No. No. Oh,
And
we already,
another, and,
and rightfully we see this. We say we hear people saying, "Hey, this is about America first," and part of America first was extricating ourselves from these wars, from these never-ending bloodletting operations and money-letting operations, right?
but another big aspect of this, which gets less coverage, we're talking about blowing up the narco boats and the double tap and the legitimacy of that. We're talking about getting sucked into a Black Hawk Down or worse from something between Black Hawk Down and Vietnam and Venezuela. But there's another aspect, which is Patrick Byrne, Byrne,
Yep.
and
Yeah, he's been a
he's on
guest on this platform. Yeah.
he's on with Alex Jones all the time. Alex Jones is all gung ho for war with Vietnam right now. He
Venezuela.
seems to be,
Mhm.
and they are also pushing a thread, and I have no way to determine if it's legit or not. I don't know if it's 100% legit or 100% psyop, but that Venezuela has been one of the arch villains of the whole Dominion electronic voting machine stories.
Mhm.
And that these, masterminds in Venezuela with all their billions of ill-gotten oil money have been orchestrating uh, rigging elections in 72 countries around the world that they have, with modern computational power, AI, et cetera. You don't have to like add 10% to every county in the country. You just have to do an analysis of like the 4 or 5
Right.
key swing states, and then swing the 4 cities in those 4 swing states, and then you win the whole presidential election.
That's right.
And so if you've just got those Dominion voting machines that you can switch the votes in those key places, and it's Venezuela, Snidely Whiplash with the mustache and the big hat again, right, and the cape. So Venezuela, we've got to get into Venezuela to get Snidely Whiplash and the vote machines sorted out. I have no idea if that's 100% legit. Alex Jones obviously thinks it is. He completely accepts everything David Byrne and others are telling him. The experts on Twitter, Data Republican, et cetera. It's all about Venezuela. They're the arch villain of the world. And I don't know if we're being, that's like the new domino theory. We got to stop them North Vietnamese from taking over the South Vietnam because of the whole Southeast Asia is going to go communist if we don't. Not looking at it like maybe this is like between the Vietnamese, you know, you know what I mean? Like this might just be a Vietnamese thing, and they don't want half their country carved off.
Well, and my contention, Matt, is that yeah, there might have been a component coming out of Venezuela, but who's running Venezuela? And I don't mean Maduro, I don't mean
The
Chavez.
CIA, yeah,
That's exactly it.
and
It's
a lot of people
them,
say, "Oh, the CIA's mad because their poppy fields are gone,
right,
and their oil money from Venezuela is gone,
right,
and now we're blowing up their drug boats. So
right.
what's the source of their of?" But I don't know how legit even that argument is. It's the wilderness of mirrors. You know, it's the wilderness of mirrors means some mirrors are two-way mirrors. Some
That's right.
mirrors are just mirrors. Some mirrors are mirrors facing other mirrors. I think James Jesus Angleton, a CIA guy in the 60s, might have coined that phrase. But anyway, or one of those spooks back in the 60s. But why would the CIA need to raise funds from Venezuela? I thought that there was like 89 gazillion dollars in black budgets that they can just like move like, whoosh, underneath the table goes from that box to that box. So why do they need, or do I necessarily believe the CIA is going broke for black ops because we cut off their poppies in Afghanistan
No,
and we cut off their cocaine from Venezuela?
no.
I think they got all the money they need.
I do too.
So I don't
If
know.
anything, they needed a front out of Venezuela so that if it went south, the
They can point
exposure to
at
this,
that.
they could say it's Venezuela, it's
Right.
Venezuela. And when you see Alex Jones saying it's all Venezuela, it's all whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. And I'm thinking give credit, and I'll also add the Iranians into this.
Yeah, that's right.
Give credit to them. The Iranians don't need to like bring in engineers to figure out how to build a bridge or an elevator
No,
or a building or
right,
dam.
right.
The Iranians have their own textbooks, right? They do their own engineering. They invented chess. The
Mhm.
Russians are the masters of chess.
Right,
Russian middle schoolers take calculus. All
right.
right. They punch above their weight intellectually, IQ wise. So we may outnumber them, but if you're talking about the average IQ of, you can't even compare the Iranians, the Persians, to say the Saudis.
Hmm.
Whole different thing in terms of their ancient culture. So yeah, they've had the Islamic overlay on top of it, but they've got a very deep culture and very high intellectual base in Iran. It's a fact. You don't deny it. So when you try to out strategize them, like siding with whatever Israel wants to do vis-a-vis Iran, I don't think you're necessarily going to win. They got some very smart people over there,
Hmm.
and so do the Russians,
Hmm.
and they know our history and their history better than we know. I think our own. What's it? It's the Sun Tzu. If you know
Right.
yourself and your enemy, you'll never lose in 100 battles.
That's
I
right.
think the Russians know their history and our history. When you see people like Jack Keane on television, obviously, nobody on Fox is going to say, I don't want Jack Keane on my show anymore. I think he's an idiot. Karl Rove, I never want to see him again.
Right,
These turds that keep floating to the top of the bowl at Fox News.
right.
What are their bona fides of success? Karl Rove won one Bush campaign once, and he's Mr. Whiteboard, and Jack Keane's out there. Oh, the Ukraine, we're going to retake Crimea. I mean, it's obvious that the Russians must look at us and say, they got to be faking.
Right,
There must be some really smart guys somewhere.
right.
They can't all really be that stupid.
Right.
It's got to be a fake.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And I can see very easily, because even in Panama where we had to win, right? Or Grenada, we had to win. Things happened even in Grenada.
Hmm.
We lost people in Grenada.
Uh-huh.
The enemy gets a vote. They got guns too. It's not like we're so brainwashed by like John Wick type movies
Right.
where one guy who's mad because they killed his dog can like go into a building with 100 Russian mafia killers and karate chop and shoot every single one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like the narrative that's built into America. And when we watch our military and we watch Pentagon officials, our troops are the best troops in the history of the world. It's like, yay! I don't I don't believe that at all. I mean, for a lot of our army, the army is like a welfare program where you have babies and they pay for it. And the idea that our army could get itself to the Donbass battlefield. Let's say they miraculously could have a port nearby that wouldn't be bombarded with missiles. We would be what? Trying to drive in Bradleys to where the whole battlefield is littered with burned armored personnel carriers from the last
look, a
3
drone.
years. And Shaniqua is going to be like jumping out. No, it is going to be a fiasco. So we still got the high ground on like the big tech, like, oh, we got the F-35, we got the B-1 and B-2 bombers, stealth bomber. Well, when the president of Saudi Arabia comes, we fly over with aircraft. This is very third world. It's very, if you have to do that, it's like the bully showing you his brass knuckles.
That's right.
Right. I'm fat and out of shape, but look at these brass knuckles. I'll knock people out with these. A real fighter doesn't have to show you his brass knuckles.
That's right.
You don't need to fly over the stadium with your aircraft.
No, it was kind of like Putin, right? In Alaska. Putin looked at it and goes, essentially, people said, oh, he was intense. My guess is Putin looked at that and go, that's all you got?
Well, it's like,
right?
You come to Russia, I don't have to show you like a
guess what?
Between our jets.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That's so low class. It's like nouveau riche behavior.
Yeah,
it's like all the gold, everything. Every time Trump's in that office, there's like more gold.
I know.
And okay, he's paying for it. I don't
But we're
care.
not going to audit. Wait, but we're not going to audit Fort Knox, Matt.
But it's
we're not going to audit Fort Knox. But look at all the gold we got. Look at my.
But it's gauche.
I know.
That term gauche, like nouveau riche.
Yeah.
When you meet the Saudi Prince Ben Salman or Putin, and you've got to like show your brass knuckles, it's like you're like President Camacho on Idiocracy. You've got wearing like your wife beater American flag shirt. I mean, come on, have a little class.
Yeah.
Be understated.
Right.
It makes people not believe that you're really tough when you're constantly showing off your brass knuckles.
So last question, Matt, you've been very generous with your time. If I showed the video we just did to Navy SEAL Matt Bracken, a couple of years in. So let's go back in time. And I show him Matt Bracken, young Navy SEAL Matt Bracken, a couple of years in, this video we did today. What would he say about the video?
I was already really questioning a lot of these things.
Were you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. I was questioning a lot of the leadership that we had, a lot of our missions. But I was a total peacetime SEAL. I when I came in, it was post-Vietnam almost, late 70s and end of the 70s. So all of my mentors were Vietnam veterans. So all of our training was like simulating jungle or woods. In like Puerto Rico or Virginia woods, North Carolina woods. The idea that SEALs would morph into guys that are like jumping out of vehicles wearing hard plate body armor and giant helmets is completely foreign to me. That was all of my training was light and stealthy, like Vietnam War. We didn't have rifle plates that would stop a rifle bullet anyway. So there was no point in wearing soft body armor if the enemy you're worried about is going to shoot a rifle bullet at you, right? If body armor is great for like if you're a Marine and mortars are landing around you,
right?
And frag might hit you in the chest and kill you, a little splinter. But if you're a SEAL and you're going to be in a point man runs into another point man and you're suddenly slinging bullets at each other, you need to be able to run real fast and crawl through canals and through pipes. You can't bulk up. So the SEALs are always evolving. I'm not saying it's just different. It's not what my era was a whole different era, but watching Operation Iraqi Freedom, I remember I was actually in a military exchange watching them drive into Baghdad and going under the big, like 2 swords and everything.
Right.
And it was like mission accomplished on the aircraft carrier. And I was like, oh, buddy, you just,
no,
just jumped into the briar patch.
Right.
This is only day one. The enemy gets a vote too. And you know that we effed things up so bad in Afghanistan
Yes, we
and
did.
in Iraq
Yep.
and in Vietnam because sometimes the light touch is much better.
Yep.
If, let's say, Kennedy wasn't assassinated and all we did in Vietnam was send some Green Beret advisors, then you can actually get out of it. If you're just saying this isn't working, we can get out.
Right.
Once you start putting all your big chips on the table,
Yeah. Look out.
and another thing that happens in the military is everybody wants a piece of the action.
Yeah.
It's not, you can't just say, look, we're just doing Venezuela with the Ranger Regiment, SEALs, and if it takes if it takes any more than the 500 guys, we're not doing it. Oh my God, the Air Force, they're losing their mind. Big Army, they're losing their mind. The Marine Corps, they're losing their mind. They want the hovercraft hitting the beach. Everybody wants to get in on the action because that's how you get promoted.
That's right.
You
That's
got
how
to
you get your
be at the
stars,
big,
man. That's how you get your stars.
you got to be in that tank battle in Iraq. You got to have the big tank battle. So I saw it over and over again, where instead of sending just some Rangers to blow up a bridge, it's like, no, we're gonna like hold the bridge, and we're gonna do the bridge at Remagen, and everything grows and out of it, it gets bigger and bigger because all of the players want their team in this fight. It may be you're a colonel, you're never gonna, or you're a lieutenant colonel. Your window to retirement is closing. If you don't get a combat action ribbon in the next 3 years, you never will. If you don't, you need it. You're like lusting for it. Not saying that all the guys that came out of the global war on terror, no, I'm not saying it, but you've got these colonels and commanders that missed their war.
Right.
They were in this theater when this was going on, and their peers that have combat action ribbons and bronze stars, and they flew ahead. And this dynamic can easily take over Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a Black Hawk down, I don't think they're going to say, big mistake, get out. I think
Yeah, right.
Say,
No. We got to update.
Send the 82nd.
Yeah. More chips on the table. So, Matt, last question. I know I said that before, but last question.
Sure.
What percent chance do we have of this being a quick, as you mentioned, quick, decisive, boom, versus a come on to the Briar Patch, Black Hawk Down event? What are the odds of those two?
I can't even, I probably 1/3 it goes great and we win. 2/3 it's some level of Black Hawk Down that will stigmatize Trump as a blowhard who lost troops for nothing. And at the worst, we just keep escalating because of the pride factor. They've got POWs, they shoot down a plane load of Rangers, crash lands instead of, it's damaged. They can't parachute. It goes into the jungle, and now we got 20 Rangers, POWs. Then what?
Yeah.
So it's all those then whats. But then you'll see Jack Keane on TV. It's
yeah,
like,
I know.
We can win this. All we need to do is send 2 Marine divisions, the 82nd. It'll be done in a year.
Yeah. Matt, what's the most effective way for folks to follow you 24/7?
Probably on Twitter X, where I'm Matt_Bracken 48, I believe is my current handle. But all of my books, in fact, when we started talking about enemies, foreign and domestic, that is my first book.
Uh-huh.
And I have all of these novels. You can kind of tell what they're about based on, there's the narco cartels taking over the Southwest. That could never happen.
No.
Suborning, all the La Raza, Aztlan.
Yeah. And when you wrote that, Matt, they were all like, that could never happen.
It's way in the future.
Man.
Yeah, or just America breaking into pieces.
Yeah.
And then I've got another series of books featuring different characters and everything. But you can get them from me directly. Amazon's becoming such a joke.
Bad.
Amazon, I almost lose money sending books to Amazon. So if you get the book straight from me,
enemiesforeignanddomestic.com.
Right. And these are pretty massive books. They're like 500 pages.
Yeah, they're great.
And these novels, I think they're really well written. They've got thousands of reviews. And normally they're $24. But if you get 3 or more, I'll sell them for 20 each because the postage is such a huge factor. So
Right.
when you send one book to one at a time, much more of it is eaten up by the postage.
That's right.
And if you send three and then larger quantities of books, in fact, I sell cases for which is sort of like industry wholesale, which is like half of retail. So I sell cases of 16. So if you're thinking of like Christmas presents,
Which is great.
you can do it that way. And you can I've got a PO box for snail mail checks, cash, money orders, and also a PayPal that's on my website. But yeah, you can get these and maybe give them out for Christmas presents. But I've written these as pretty much a labor of love because they have given me the credibility to come on shows like yours and talk about these things. Because, I've been writing about stuff way before it begins to happen.
And
Like
you're demonized for doing so.
yeah, it's all right. That's all right.
It's part of the game.
I live
It's
in
part of
free
the game. But
Florida.
look, always consider the source, as my parents.
I live in free Florida, so we have a good governor. I wouldn't live in I love California, but boy, that state's lost.
Well, talk about lost states. We are in the largest POW camp in all of North America, that being the state of Michigan, under the Commandant Klink of
Well, and
governors.
all of these good states that have it seems like the university campus,
Yeah.
the big university towns, Austin,
Ann Arbor.
if I think that we need to go through there with the midnight helicopter charter crew and straighten out some of these people.
Yeah, we are at I fondly call it Moscow on the Huron River here in
Yeah,
Matt Bracken, I'd like to thank you for everything you have
thank
done,
you.
are doing, and will do. Thank you, folks, for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.